Well, thank you, Bill. It's always hard to follow Bill Gertz. I'm Sara Carter. I'm a national security war correspondent with the Washington Examiner. I worked with Bill previously at the Washington Times, and before that with Media News Group and the Los Angeles News Group out of California. I'm going to tell you a little bit about myself in case you don't know. I actually started working national security stories from California. I spent my time traveling to the US-Mexico border. At the time, this was probably around 8 years ago. At the time, we had heard a lot of stories about people crossing the border. The DHS was saying that basically it was safe, there was just immigrants crossing, there wasn't a problem. So I decided to go see for myself what was going on at the border. I speak Spanish fluently, I've traveled to Mexico many times, and one of the biggest issues for me, the biggest concern, was the drug cartel movement and that nexus with other organizations throughout the world, their ability to move massive amounts of product into the United States without being identified, and those products entering the United States, whether those be contraband of narcotics or just human smuggling. So it took me to the border. I spent many years on the US-Mexico border uncovering an enormous amount of stories from Mexican military officials crossing into the United States and aiding the drug cartels, to even a tunnel, which I discovered on my own, right along the San Diego border. And yeah, I found it. I actually saw the tunnel from our side, drove into Mexico, and then came down the side of a mountain and met with some pretty bad guys on the other side of that tunnel that were planning on entering the United States, and got their story. Eventually, those stories led me to Washington, D.C. I came to work for the Washington Times as the Pentagon reporter and a war correspondent. I traveled frequently to Afghanistan. My father was a Marine, and so it's very important for me to get the word from the ground, from our troops, from the guys who are really sacrificing their lives on the front line, and believe me, they are. They're sacrificing not only their time away from their family, but they're sacrificing with their life and limbs and those of their friends. And it's very tragic to see exactly what Bill had said and Frank had said, a dwindling of foreign correspondents who aren't there to tell their stories. You know, this is not about going to the Pentagon and being briefed by Secretary Gates or Admiral Mullen, who I know. This is about getting to the places where our young men and women are fighting and trying to get their stories out so that we, as an electorate, and hopefully I, as a reporter, can take those stories to you. And then you can make the decision on whether or not the administration is doing the job that they need to be doing for our troops and for us. And I've been to Afghanistan 5 times. I'm going back again in the spring. I was in Pakistan in March. I spent a good amount of time in North Waziristan, where Al-Qaeda is said to be hiding and finding a safe haven. I was also in South Waziristan during some fighting. And this last trip that I took, I actually just returned in October from Afghanistan. I spent more than a month with our Marines and Army troops on the ground in Kandahar, as well as in Helmand province. And I came back hoping that the stories that I brought with me made a difference. Our troops are frustrated. They feel like their hands are tied behind their back. They feel like they can't fight the enemy the way that they need to fight the enemy in order to stop this. You hear a lot of stories about the Afghan National Army and security forces. Oh, they're going to be ready in 2014 now, and they're doing their job, and we're training them. Well, let me tell you this from experience. I have traveled with the Afghan National Army many times, and there are some good ones. I'm not going to say that there aren't. But they misfired their weapons a bunch of times. They put lives in danger. We've seen that the system is not working in Afghanistan. The corruption is enormous, but our Afghan national security forces are pretty much falling apart. I was talking to a soldier just the other day who I met in Afghanistan. He's there right now. And he said to me, Sara, we're so frustrated. We went out with the A&A guys. They were smoking pot. They were selling dope. They've stolen stuff off of our forward operating base. They're selling it on the black market. We're not allowed to get the stories, we're not allowed to talk about this. Please find a way to get these stories out there so that people know that what they're being told is lies. This is propaganda, propaganda in order to make the war effort look like it's going in the right direction. Well, our troops are there and they're doing the best job they know how. And let me tell you, it's funny, but you hear about the greatest generation. My dad was a World War II Marine, and he was a great man, and that was a great generation. But this group of young soldiers, men and women, are unbelievable. They are the most amazing people I have ever met in my life. And I would guarantee you that they would sacrifice everything to save their buddies, to save an Afghan child, me, and I've been out there enough to know that. So I believe it's my responsibility as a reporter covering these topics to take the risks, to bring their stories home. I just hope that people listen and go to their senators, go to the Congress, and talk to them about this, because believe me, this is a breaking point in Afghanistan. And Frank said, this is a very dangerous world. He's right. I've seen it with my own eyes. I've been to Pakistan enough. I've traveled through the Middle East enough. I've traveled into Afghanistan enough to know that we were there for a very good reason. After September 11th, the loss of life, both the World Trade Centers here in New York City, this is where it really started for us, where our eyes were opened. And the Pentagon attack, and the other plane that crashed with all those innocent lives. Al-Qaeda, this nexus with the Taliban, this resurgence of a Taliban in the last 3 years, is a very real and dangerous force. They intend to do us harm. They do. And anyone who says that, they haven't hit us yet, we've just been lucky. We have just been lucky. I have interviewed Taliban detainees. I have met with people in very high-level officials, both in Pakistan and in Afghanistan, and intelligence officials here in the United States, who know that it is only a matter of time, and we are only fooling ourselves if we don't believe it. So we are there for a very good reason. Afghanistan is vitally important to the national security of this country. But, and this is only from my experience, so I can only talk from this, but if we don't do the job right, if we leave Afghanistan in a mired mess, we will be haunted by this in the future, and we're going to have to end up going back. This is a very, very difficult situation for both our troops and both the American people, and obviously for our administration. And this is a message from our troops. You have to let us do our job. You have to let us go after the enemy. Let us take the enemy down. Let us do our job. Well, I won't take up any more time. I know that David would love to talk, and I welcome any questions that you have, and it's a pleasure to be here, and thank you very much.